Are you immersed in a sea of business advice and education, but not sure what to embark on first? Instead of adding to the ocean of information, we're here to help you navigate it like a pro. The Wayfinding Growth Podcast will help you take a deep dive into new actionable strategies, tools, and tactics to help you grow. So start charting a course for business growth as you explore a better way to grow further, faster, with your hosts, Remington and George B. Thomas.
What's up, Mr. Remington Bag? It is so amazing to finally get back together and do one of these recaps. And might I say, I am slightly excited that we are recapping Mike Allton's episode. You know, I got to ask you a question, but I'm going to state something before I ask the question.
Okay.
That episode took me by surprise.
Okay.
What are your thoughts about it?
So, how do I phrase this? It was
that's what I'm talking about right there. I knew that was the response I was going to get.
Yeah.
So go for it.
You know Mike Allton better than I. I had met him on that actual podcast. So
yes.
So like I was knowing the concept of the topic. It was not exactly where I expected to go, but at the same time, I was like, oh, it's not just me, kind of thing. So that was super fun. But no, it was a really good episode, and I think that especially for some of our listeners and viewers who aren't as advanced in marketing, it was some really good nuggets to roll with. And like he talked about tackling, like he literally just like tackled any objections away from getting started with content. So it was amazing.
Yeah. To me, it's funny because as I sat back and listened for the recap episode, I realized that you and I especially, it's very easy for us to get in the weeds, meaning the very deep end, meaning the nerdy stuff around what we do when it comes to marketing and sales. And therefore, we hang around other people who are super nerdy in those topics. And it's funny because we always preach, like, simplify the complex, like, and sometimes that's hard, and sometimes we do a great job. But Mike's episode was a great job of having a piece of content to send out to somebody who is like, no, my website is a brochure. No, I don't know where to start. No, I'm not sure how to get immediate success. And now we at Impulse Creative can be like, we got
Listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Or, I don't think I need a blog because it sounds like work.
Yeah.
There could be those too.
Do you know, it's funny, we still have those conversations, but
never
mind. We got to keep rolling. You know, the immediate thing that I know, both you and I, because I saw your eyes, and viewers, listeners, just rewind the episode back to the beginning of last episode. As soon as Mike started to speak, watch my face, watch Remington's face, because we both were like looking at each other through a camera, and for a hot second, not even really paying attention to that Mike was in the room with us, because Remington literally put, and it's still in our show notes to the sidebar, this guy's voice is on fire. and so it's just amazing what technology will do. He had a mixer tied into an ATR 2100. So we have half the story put together for our audio. But, you know, the thing that I want to hit on that, Remington, is it makes such a difference when you're trying to listen to a podcast. Like, I even pulled this up. So typically I rewatch on YouTube because I can hit the, like, watch this at, like, 130 because I got this little Chrome extension. If you're watching this or listening.
Which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, if you're wondering what that Chrome extension is, just email me, george@impulsecreative.com. We'll start the conversation on how you can learn faster and better. Anyway, I digress. I was listening to it on the podcast app, and I was like, dang. Not only did it sound great in real life, it sounds great on the podcast app on my phone. It's crazy.
Yeah. So we had a similar look on our faces back in episode 17 with Jeremy Vest, but that wasn't because of audio. That was because his video was on fire. And so I'm like, damn, I got to level it up. So like pretty soon Rachel's not going to let me do these things because every time I do this, I'm like, babe, I got to buy more stuff.
Yeah. So why do we do these episodes? So that we can find excuses to buy more toys. That's the reason.
Yeah.
So Remington, we quickly got into talking about Mike Allton, and I love the new format, by the way,
yes,
of actually the guest backstory and like how do they make a living, and some waypoints and milestones. And it's been very interesting knowing that we have 4 in the hopper that we've already recorded. It's been very interesting to watch them answer or try to think about how they're going to answer these questions in a way. You can immediately start seeing them. Their brain polarizes. Personal, professional. What do I talk about? Type thing, and it's really amazing. But there have been some magical moments, and I love that with Mike. He's just like, look, well, actually, there was a little bit of joke of him blogging since he was 2 years old, which was hilarious. But that he's been doing this for 10 years, and that he's been doing this out of necessity, and that he totally realizes there was times when he first got started that he did it wrong. But the underlying thing that I want to pull out that was said numerous times in this episode, he gave himself a place to play, and as he was playing, he tested.
Yep. And there's a couple of other episodes that are going to be coming up in the future too that we've already recorded as of today that have almost a very similar story. And I think so I love this new format too, because it was a couple episodes back, we realized how much we didn't know the story because I started making mistakes between Thailand and Singapore. But
that was a fun game. That was a fun game though.
It was a fun game. But when we're looking at the understanding the journey, right? This is wayfinding growth. Like we're telling people where to go and like how they should think about stuff. But I want to make sure we're understanding where people are coming from. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about this, because no one has said that they were an overnight success yet. And this kind of reinforces that, that commitment, the grit, the focus that people need to have. And then sometimes it's not focused. Sometimes they're like, oh, I went complete left field or right field, and then I came back like 2 years later. And knowing that just because you pivoted doesn't mean that it was a waste. So
yeah, it's funny. I have not said this yet, but I'm gonna say it today. I really can't wait till we hit like episode 100. Because I already have an article idea that I want to create when we get there, and it will be something along the lines of what successful people do, 100 episodes of the Wayfinding Growth Show, because people can listen to this show and what's funny is we're recapping Mike's, but we're talking a lot about the show, which is fine, but people can listen.
Yeah, we'll bring it back.
Yeah, we'll bring it back, people. I promise. People can listen to the show for just what the title says it's going to be, or people can listen to the show for the micro magical pieces of information that the guests drop along the way. And those breadcrumbs, and then the pattern of those breadcrumbs over a data set or 100 episodes is going to be very interesting to look at. Actually, what was funny, talking forward, guests, we had an episode with Christopher Penn that's coming up. Wouldn't it be interesting? Wouldn't it be interesting to have Christopher Penn drop Wayfinding Growth into some type of machine learning and see what it spit out? That might be interesting. Anyway, let's get back into Mike Allton. Remington, during the intro, was there anything else that kind of grabbed your attention that you started to think about and pull out?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about his journey from a content point of view, and one of the things that caught me is he realized, hindsight 2020, that he had the wrong audience in the beginning, but he loved just creating and educating people. And so that was back in 2012. But he also talked about that being able to, he enjoys writing content, so it doesn't have to be written. And I think that's one of the underlying things you talked about a little bit later on the episode but like it allowed for him to create a voice for himself and for his company. And he didn't even go into it with a monetization plan. And I know you and I both have stories around that as well. So it was really cool. It was really cool just to kind of hear how he fell into it
Yeah.
And then one of my biggest things, which also brings us back to some other episodes too, is when people start talking about that, like it opened doors, right? So it's a very similar symptom or data set, if we're going to get nerdy with it, that allows for us to really understand that, like, as soon as you start actually having a platform, then suddenly you'll start seeing results. And at the time, and this dates the, how long he's been working on this, it was Google Plus. That was one of those things that, like, like what? Like Google Plus, and this is like weeks after Google announced that Plus was going away.
Yeah.
But anyways, but there's a couple lessons there. Is one, he jumped on a bandwagon when he saw opportunity, and he started sharing content. And more importantly, it wasn't just the platform, but it was the communication, the conversation.
Yeah.
And he had some people keeping him accountable.
Yeah.
So broadcasting versus, communicating, I think was a pretty big takeaway for me.
Yeah. The thing that I love that he talked about was when creating your content and kind of where he was at that point and where you want to watch out not to be is getting on. And by the way, how do I say this without getting hate mail? Like, social media is not your personal soapbox. And treating social media or the place in which you're creating content as your personal soapbox, shame on you. And if you don't, like, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, then it's not you. But if you're like, screw you, George, you're the guy or gal I'm talking to right now. I'm just throwing that out there. Okay, I officially got hate mail in the future. But the point is, it should be a discussion board, right? But for it to be a discussion board, you have to have an open mind. And that is one of those kind of nuggets that I think that needs to be woven around, is most people who are highly successful have an open mind to the way that other people feel, think, breathe, move on this planet, as well as they understand like how to have an internal discussion with themselves, not in a weird way, in a self-awareness way. Anyway,
there was one other thing to that. So, but it's also having a position. Right. Yeah. And that was like one of those underlying nuggets that he was talking about. Like, like you and I create a lot of how-to content, but nothing is going to create conversation as much as a position is. Like, if you have a position on or an opinion of something and you share that, or you share an example of how those kinds of content is going to be really cool. And that's where we start getting into more of the deep dive.
It's funny because, like, I've been battling with creating some content that is a little bit different than hey, how to do this in HubSpot or how to do this in Wistia. One of my biggest fears is actually injecting my opinion into some of these things, right? Because, hey, opinions are like buttholes. Everybody has one, and some of them really stink. I'm just throwing that out there. Sure. I'm really careful on, like, okay, if it's how-to and educational, you can't really argue with that. But it's how George feels about virtual work, man, that could start. And maybe I want a hornet's nest. I don't know, but
I think there's a place for that, right? And I don't mean necessarily like where to put it, but I mean literally, like, there could be I think it's dangerous if you throw opinion over a how-to. I think it's another thing to have those as separate. Mediums.
Speaking of content, let's talk about 50 pieces of content. That was kind of amazing moment where, like, Mike talked about, I love that he was like, our friends at HubSpot. and like, he realizes he was talking to HubSpot Homer lover people. and he's like, they did this study, and it was 50 pieces of content. And you know what I hate about it? And then I'm going to let you talk about it. Is I jacked the thing, the freak up, because I even had to put a thing in the episode of, like, I'm an idiot, and I meant to say a piece a day for 50 days. And I know the math did not work. Look, numbers is not my thing, I guess. But it's like, when I was listening back editing, and I'm like, oh, geez.
That was 10.
Yeah, that was 10 pieces. I'm not even halfway there yet. So I was like, okay, on the recap, I have to explain to people. I mean, if I knew that it was 50 pieces of content, I would create a piece a day for 50 days.
Right.
To get the maximum like boost out of the gate, if you will. What were you thinking about when you heard that from an HEC standpoint and like applying services for folks?
Yeah. So I grabbed the sales hat out of a couple of things he talked about. But before I get into the actual content, he talked about the habits and the mindset of creating content. Right. And I thought that was super powerful because, since you came on, we've had conversations about like every morning I'm putting out a tutorial and you're doing multiples a day and the reasons and the feelings behind that.
Yep.
And I want to come back to that in a minute to tie this back. But when we start talking about the content that needs to be created, one of the most beautiful things that he said was like, so how soon do you want to see success and what does it look like to you? I literally have a note in our show notes and tagged, talk to Jackie about it. Like that's a really eloquent, non-pushy way of capturing that. And when we start talking about content, it's not, especially from an agency services point of view, but it's any company could be like, well, I want to see some results. I want to I want to go crazy fast and get things rolling. And the first thing they go to is paid because it's a flash in the pan and they feel it and they're like, oh, this is amazing. But you could have that same flash in the pan if you literally committed and put out 50 pieces of content in a month.
Yep.
And it's not impossible. And so there's a couple scenarios of that. One is, so we've talked about the drift tutorials and I very quickly, and this is not me trying to be big headed, but very quickly have built some, notoriety, we'll say, in regards to the fact that I know what's going on with drift and conversational marketing. And other than nerding out about it and trying to learn as much as I can about it personally, sharing a video a day has accelerated that for me. And I've got 107 videos as of this episode. So, so these videos that I'm kind of putting back to back together are, accelerating that. And then we can take the same thing and talk about Sprocket Talk, right?
Yeah,
because coming back from Inbound, we've had a lot of those conversations too, where how many episodes of Sprocket Talk do we have now?
Well, we're right around. Well, we're right around 200. And man, do I have some thoughts around that? Like, but go ahead, finish your thoughts.
Yeah. So the cadence and the format is something you need to pay attention to. But the cadence is ultra important, especially when you think about competition, because the competitors are going to be taking apart everything you're doing. They're going to be able to write the content, but what can you do better, faster, or longer in order to make that happen? I think that's like an underlying theme in this whole section when Mike was talking was, really focusing in on that bottom of the funnel content, helping people out with the how-to content. But then he said something, and this was one of those like ahas, was the should content.
Yeah.
And so going back to the position, like telling people they should do something. Like we have like why you should blog, like all day long. But we don't have should this kind of company be blogging, or should you think about this, or should you choose an agency? Like that's a hole in our current strategy that we're going to fill up real quick.
You lost me for a minute, by the way, and not in a bad way, but I was like, oh my gosh, like, so people might know that I like video. And
they should.
They should, yeah. And so I was going to like the strategy that I've been playing with Sprocket Talk. And so I'm just going to throw this out here real quick. Yep. Like I've been playing around in Remington, this is more for the viewers and listeners. I've been playing around with, and there's an article on Impulse Creative about the video funnel in 2019. And there's 4 stages. They all start with they're all about the human mindset in that location. And there's also videos mapped to like what videos or types of videos should I create in each one of those things. By the way, this ties into Mike and creating content and 50 pieces of content, because I'm literally giving you a blueprint where you could look at it and make 50 pieces of video content, one a day, freaking transcribe it, throw it on a blog article, decimate it anyway. I get passionate. But I also started to play around with, well, what should the kind of desired time frames be in there? And then when you were talking, Remington, I started thinking, oh my gosh, like, not only could there be a pattern in times going down the funnel, but there could be a pattern of how-tos, should-Is, like, as part of this as well. Crazy. By the way, I just want to hit this before we move on to the next thing. You mentioned Sprocket Talk, and I want everybody to realize that for me, Sprocket Talk has been a thing of how do I prove to myself, right or wrong, that I'm as good or not as good as I think I am in multiple ways? Meaning, I have not, this is not my first rodeo. I have created HubSpot content, how-to content for years. Right. At the sales line, I created content. However, when we decided to fire up Sprocket Talk, I wanted to prove to myself that I could or could not do it quicker. Like, do it better, right? And so the way that I've always been looking at this, and the way that Mike said this was like an epiphany, aha moment for me. There are some, by the way, no disrespect to anybody out there in the space, because if you're creating content, you're awesome. But there are people out there that are playing the game with 3 or 4 darts. A month. I'm playing the game with 3 or 4 darts a day. How many points do you think that I'll be able to accumulate over a 30-day period, 90-day period, 365-day period? Right? Those are all darts on a dartboard that people are able to see, engage with. Like, that's the point. Like, and I'm not saying like you have to be that aggressive to win the game, but if you're in business, if you're trying to drive revenue, if you're trying to #Wayfinding Growth, grow your business. Right. Maybe throw some more darts, people. Oh my goodness. I
just laid it down.
I'm going to step off my soapbox for a hot minute.
There you go. But yeah, so to that point though, right? So especially startups should be listening to this. They, you know, startups, whether they're funded or not, content's not something that has to cost money. It costs time. Right?
True.
But that's something that they could create and create a whole lot of value and drive a lot of growth, you know. And Mike talked about the 50 pieces of content, seeing exponential growth. Visualizing that for the layman is like a hockey stick of a growth chart, right? Where it's like whoosh, and it just takes off. And you know, at Impulse we put out 20 pieces of content a month that's written. And then we put out about 75 to 100 pieces of content per month in regards to video. And so when we're talking about what's possible, like we're growing at a rate of about 30% month over month just from organic traffic alone. So you know, so it's not to say we're not working hard and making it happen, but that's not paid. Like we are earning that, and that's where the exponential comes on, because you know, if you think about that, over a year, that's 300 pieces of content that's written. Like, you've got a huge opportunity to really just like take off. So focus on content, make it a core piece of your marketing, not an ancillary add-on.
Yeah, I want us to be very careful of that not getting paid thing, because sure, we're not getting paid money yet. But the idea of what we're doing is every video that we make that is time, and it's, you know, it's a savings account. It's a savings account of thought leadership. It's a savings account of significance to somebody's life. It's a savings account to that you're the go-to guy or gal on the topic, the product, the service that you provide. So at some point, you're going to want to retire. You see what I'm saying here? And so you're going to have this content that you have put into your savings account that will then, because what you sow is what you will reap. It'll all come back, and money. I mean, that's what's and but it's over here, not now. Right? It's the long game, not the short game. Hey, we got to keep going. Mike talked about some tools.
You just said short game versus long game before I did.
You know, I'm learning.
All right, let's roll.
Yeah, Mike talked about tools, and this was the part. I mean, I love the whole episode, but he was talking about capturing the ideas.
Yeah,
there were so many years in my life that I just let ideas slip by, and I just could punch myself in the face, but that would hurt, and I wouldn't want to do that. But like, so I have actually started to use. He used Evernote. He talked about Evernote.
Yep.
And he talked about Google Keep and OneNote and brought all those up. And I was like, oh, crap. Here at Impulse Creative, we use all the Google tools. So let me I have – please don't judge me. Please don't judge me. I have never used Google Keep. And so I was like, I'm going to use Google Keep. I'm going to see what it's all about. Holy mackerel. Like, it's great. Yeah. It's and because here's what I was looking for. Like, here's a pain point, and I don't know, Remington, if anybody else is facing this. And I had a conversation with you about this. Like, at first I was capturing all of my ideas in the same tool that is my to-do or task management, Asana. Yep. And then all of a sudden I realized it's really hard for me to figure out what the heck I'm supposed to do because there's do and idea in one place. Right. And so I literally had to clean that out. But then having this place where I can go throw ideas and ideate. And then this is the one other thing I want to say about this piece that Mike started to talk about. Blew my mind. Was like, it blew my mind because it's not normal, by the way. People, I got to write a blog. Okay, sit down. Start blog. Finish blog. Ship blog. Make blog photos. Right? Right? Nobody ever writes a paragraph and then writes 2 paragraphs of this blog and writes 3 paragraphs of this blog and sets it down for 30 days. No, Mike, right? But now I'm like, now I have documents where I'm like, these 5 articles over here. These 2 articles. So like last night, for instance, I was working on this idea about 5 ways artificial intelligence is going to completely transform marketing and video for sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. Haven't written a word as far as the blog, but got like 32 articles for different sections to go read, research, to mold the story that is... well, what will be an article and a talk and videos and, which is another thing, like repurposing anyway, I'm going to shut up because you got to talk too.
Yeah. So I've been a big fan of Google Keep for a while. I kept that one secret from you, so I'm sorry. But the one thing I don't like about Google Keep, and I'm going a little bit deeper into this content, is, as I'm not writing as much blog content as maybe I should, but good news is I have a really great team that's killing it. I'm more on the video bandwagon, and then we're going to be doing some more longer form content that I'm going to keep under wraps at the moment. But I haven't been in Evernote for about 4 years, and so we used to use it day to day, and then it was like, this is great, but half the team's using it. It's not something that can be used by everyone. It's another tool. Like, we should just move to Docs. And so we made that move to Docs, and I've always really missed being able to search content. And now Google Keep, you can search content. So like, if you have those 47 different video blog ideas, which are great, which you could have had in Asana, our project management system, but the idea of being able to actually put in like a thought after the topic or after the working topic, that was probably one of my biggest nuggets from him. Going back and forth and like coming back and revisiting it, that's just my life. That's how I typically do things. But Evernote, what I like about Evernote versus Google Keep is Evernote allows for formatting. So on these longer form things, Google Keep's where you store your ideas. You're going to need to take that somewhere. Now, the good news is Google Keep takes it right into Google Docs, like with one click, and then you can go crazy. But Evernote, for me, I signed up. I bought the personal plan for Evernote, and I'm working on some of my more long form pieces because you need to search. But the good news is being able to search those things. And in Google Docs, you just can't do that. Like, if you have like 150 topics and you're like, I feel like writing about video today, and you're following what Mike said in regards to like just picking and choosing and rolling with it, you have to look through files. But in Google Keep, you could be like, just key in, I'm doing air typing, people.
Yeah.
For
That's
those
why I
that
did.
are on video. Yeah, there you go. So you could just search for like what are about video that I'm doing, and you could also make it so that you note that they're already done. So that was really compelling, and I really like that idea. And I think it's a great idea, especially if you're working with an agency, for owners to be able to do that. Can you imagine like having that question, throwing it in the Keep, and then just sharing that with your agency? And then being like, oh, this is a great idea. Like that's coming straight from the CEO or the manager or someone at a company. That's a great way to pass the buck from a management point of view and be like, here, this is all the details you need.
Yeah. So Bermuda Triangle, we need to keep on moving on here.
Well, hold up.
Uh-oh.
I'm really excited. You talked about your video funnel, and I can't let this go.
Okay.
So this week's episode is brought to you by our Video Fundamentals Masterclass, which is about to launch. Business videos are not as hard as some would make you believe. We've seen incredible success with the video strategies that we've honed in, and we talked about some of our growth from an organic point of view, and we're sharing these fundamentals with you. George has gone absolutely bonkers on creating this masterclass. So you got to head on over to impulsecreative.com/VFM. and you'll get the first 2 modules for free. It is going to be super legit, and you've got to learn about this video funnel.
Yeah, speaking of that, we talk about the Bermuda Triangle. Mike talked about creating good content. We talked about knowing it, putting in the time to do the research. And then it was at this very moment, Remington, that I pulled out something very unique about the show.
Yep.
And once I say this, viewers are either going to be like, oh, that's nice, it's pretty, or they're going to be like me and be sort of weird and go back and watch the episode. This episode was the hidden song lyric episode of Wayfinding Growth, because I had heard earlier in the show an Alanis Morissette string of lyrics. There was another one that may have been or may not have been Beastie Boys, but then all of a sudden we got to the Bermuda Triangle, and Mike Allton busted out, "Don't believe the hype," but he didn't bust it out like that. He just said, "Hey,
that's how you heard it.
Yeah, don't believe the hype." And all of a sudden, I was in my head. Flavor Flay was like with the clock, like, "Don't believe," like, and I'm like, wait a minute. And all of a sudden, my mind went, and I remembered all these lyrics that were in this episode. You guys, you got to check it out. But the piece that I'm super interested for you to unpack, because for me it was like, ooh, was the heart and mind content. Like when he started to talk about that, what were your thoughts?
When he started talking about that kind of reinforces that, like, have a position, point of view. Like if you believe something, then share that you believe it. I think that companies as a whole don't do that very well. Personal brands have more of a platform to be able to do that easier. But I think sometimes we get kind of scared. You know what I mean? In regards to having a position. And that kind of goes into the other takeaways that I had was, he mentioned, like, who do you think you are? And I was actually speaking just a couple days ago, and I was talking to this guy, and he's a startup bakery, and which is not what you'd normally have. And I was like, why don't you walk downtown and like let people taste your pastries and your cakes and stuff? And he's like, his name was James. And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, is your food good? He goes, yeah, it's the best. I was like, so why won't you walk down? Like, why won't you promote it that way? And he was like, I don't know. I was like, what you got right there? That's imposter syndrome. And he was like, and that goes back to this, like, who do you think you are? And I've read a couple books or listened to a couple podcasts, and one of my favorite things is says who. Like, says who you can't do that. And that was like a really cool thing, because Mike brought that up, like, who do you think you are? You got to watch out for imposter syndrome as the pirate.
Which, by the way,
yes.
Who do you think you are is song lyrics. Go ahead. Just start singing them, viewers.
I grew up on a boat.
Who do you think you are? Anyway. Oh, I digress. It was an amazing episode. I really loved it. You definitely need to go and check out socialmediahat.com. It's facebook.com/Allton. I mean, the man is, I think he's just amazing. I think
super authentic.
Yes. Like what you see is what you get. He's trying to educate people. A very kindred spirit to, like, because when I asked him, like, do you wish that you had a way that from the beginning you would drive revenue? And you could tell that was so far from his mindset, because he just wants to educate people. He wants to be helpful. He wants to add value to the world. So it's definitely one of those folks I would follow, I would connect with. Remington, any parting last thoughts before we close this episode out?
Yeah, so just thanking Mike for dealing with us for our first episode in the new format. I know there's a couple times where he just like jumped in and was like, "Whoa, wait, whose time was this?" and stuff like that. I think it's funny that it made it through the cut. But I do, I'm glad Mike was the one we got to test out the new sample on. It was fantastic. It was really good, and I think this is going to be a great new modified format for all of our listeners.
Absolutely. Hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, see what I did there? Because usually I go with iTunes. Anyway, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the bells, the subscribes, the likes, all the things so we know that you're part of the community. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, well, head over to iTunes, because it might not be that, and leave some stars and some nice words. Also, you can always hit us up via email or the Twitters and all those good places. You know where we're at. We're looking for topics that you want to cover. But until next time, make sure that you are doing all that you can do to leave the dock of mediocrity and set sail to the sunset of your success.